Hey, welcome back to another episode of Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs. I'm so excited that you're here. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you learn a lot about starting, launching, and growing a podcast. If you've been following along for a while, thanks so much for joining us for another episode. I'm so happy that you're here and you keep showing up each and every week, or I guess now every other week with the new format, which I will say has been super nice to drop down to every other week because keeping up with weekly felt like a lot in this season of life with having a very young child and my 4-year-old. So keeping up with two podcasts on a weekly format felt like a lot. So dropping this down to every other week feels really manageable. I feel really excited about it. So today we're going to be talking about my 2024 podcast predictions, and I can't wait to chat with you about it. So let's jump in.
Welcome to the Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs podcast, a place for podcasters to learn what's actually working in the world of podcasting and how to use their podcast to generate consistent leads in their business. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm so excited you're here.
I know that it's already February, so it's a little bit late to start sharing my 2024 podcast predictions, but I figured why not? So let's jump right in. So, number one, more people will start podcast in 2024 because the barrier to entry is lower than before. So, with AI really coming in hot early last year, the post production process for podcasts is so much easier than it was before. Now, I am going to preface this with saying that AI tools are nowhere near perfect at this point and always require quite a bit of tweaking to get your final product. But it does give you a nice starting point, which drastically reduces the barrier to entry for people. But I don't think you can just use AI tools and call it a day. You definitely have to add some human touch. I think that's really important and something we really need to keep bringing to the forefront and keep reminding people because I think a lot of people think they can just use an AI tool for a podcast and call it a day, which not really it. Number two, video podcasts will continue to grow in popularity. So video has been on the rise for a number of years in general, but I definitely think more people will be putting effort into producing video content from their podcasts so that they can take advantage of YouTube's awesome search capability since they're affiliated with Google for like their videos, for shorts, etc. So I definitely think more people will be utilizing video podcasts 100%, like no joke. And it just makes things easier because I think these clips that you're pulling from the video to use for shorts or reels or stuff like that or TikTok really is going to perform better than the audiograms these days, unfortunately. So highly recommend recording video for a show, even if you're just going to use it for like pulling clips. Number three, AI isn't going anywhere and will continue to get better and assist us with creating wow-worthy podcasts. So I'm not going to lie, last year I spent like half of the year really hating AI because I felt like it blindsided me and took away some of our clients who thought they could use AI and do it all themselves and didn't really need to have a podcast producer anymore. But around June or July, I really knew I had to get my head out of the sand and start leaning into AI a little bit more and seeing what it's all about instead of being such like a hater. And that doesn't mean that I completely let AI take the reins though. I definitely think that the human touch is very much still necessary with all AI tools and will be for quite some time. So I'm not as afraid of losing everything I work for because I will keep pivoting and adapting as AI gets better. I encourage you to do so as well if you are a podcast producer or a podcaster in general. You can definitely use AI to assist you, but it shouldn't be the be all end all. My fourth prediction is that people will stop focusing on downloads as the be all end all metric. So, of course, measuring your downloads is important. I do think people will finally start to realize that there are other success metrics when it comes to podcast. Some that are going to be much more telling than download numbers, things like opt-ins to your email list, signups for your challenge or your webinar or your summit or your bundle, things like that you're sharing on the podcast and tracking properly so you can see who is actually coming from the podcast is going to be really beneficial. Like I said, obviously downloads are great. Like that really does help, but it shouldn't be the be all end all. And I think we should be tracking more than just our downloads. So yeah. And then lastly, we have analytics improvements. So I feel like podcast analytics have been pretty basic for several years now. So this is more of a hope than a true prediction because who knows what podcast hosts are going to do? Who knows what kind of data they're going to be able to get access to? But I'd really love to see some analytics improvements from podcast hosts so we can have access to more data to be able to make better decisions with our shows. Obviously, the download data, like I said, is good to have, but I definitely would love to be able to dig deeper and kind of see, a little bit more. And who knows if we'll ever be able to get that type of information, just because I know some places are definitely locking down that data versus freeing it up for people, but one can hope, right? So those are my 5 quick 2024 podcast predictions. So to recap, more people will be starting podcasts this year because the barrier to entry is lower than before. Number 2, video podcasts will continue to grow in popularity. Number 3, AI is not going anywhere. Number 4, people will find something else to focus on aside from downloads, and we will see some analytics improvements. So, yeah, those are my predictions and hopes really for podcasting in 2024. And I would love to know, what are your podcast predictions for this year? You can let me know over on Instagram. My handle is at Savvy Podcasting. I would love to chat with you about this because just I've been talking about this with people lately and it's been really fun. So I'd love to hear your take. But yeah, connect with me over on Instagram. Like I said, Savvy Podcasting is my handle, and I will see you in the next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher and leave a review. You can find us at savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com and on Facebook at Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs and Instagram at Savvy Podcasting. Make sure to join our free Facebook community for podcasters by going to savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com/community and join in on the exclusive community just for Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs listeners. I'll see you there.